Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar. We'll start right on the hour, so just hang tight for a couple minutes. All right, my clock shows 11. So, hi everyone. Welcome to Evalueserve's webinar on generative AI in banking. Hopefully that's what you were expecting when you joined just now. Before we get into this contents of the webinar, we have a few pieces of housekeeping that we do want to go over with you. One is we do want all of you to be engaged in this webinar, but we ask that you chat or use the Q&A function on the top here to ask those questions throughout. And then we'll save some time at the end to address those questions. If we don't get to your question, we'll definitely follow up afterwards as well. The second piece here is just as we're waiting for people to join, we're going to put a few polls up on the screen. This will be a good way to gauge kind of what you guys are most interested in, where your main pain points are around generative AI, what you guys want to talk about. So hopefully we touch on all of these topics throughout the webinar, but we'll also be able to, personalize it a little bit for what this group wants the most as we discuss each of those topics. So with that, I'll let you guys read. Just note that these questions are also available on the side. If you click the chat, they'll be available, and we'll keep them live for the next few minutes. So you don't have to feel like you have to answer immediately. Yeah, just so you know, all the questions are around, hey, how much of your day-to-day task is manual, right? Because there's so much automation potential for generative AI. What are the top areas that are most manual for you? Which types of automation are you already using? So is your organization very advanced or just getting started with some of these different types of automation tools? And then are you currently using generative AI in your workflows? So not just any automation, but specifically generative AI and where that is with your bank or financial institution. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how that turns out. And I think we can get started now. We have a decent attendance. So to get started, I'm Susan. I work in marketing at Evalueserve, and I'll be introducing our two speakers for today. One is Mangesh Patnaik. Mangesh is the SVP and Global Head of Sales for Evalueserve's financial services business. He has experience in banking, consulting, and entrepreneurship, and has spent the last 2 decades working with leaders across all types of financial institutions on their most pressing challenges. So specifically, he helps develop and customize technology-driven insights and analytic solutions where AI has been a hot topic this year. So during this webinar, he'll be bringing it in from that perspective, many insights from his discussions with senior banking leaders and learnings about which use cases are most impactful. We also have with us today Rigby Chavala. He is the CTO of Evalueserve and has over 18 years of experience leading high-performing product engineering teams and building AI-enabled enterprise-scale products and applications. He works across our various lines of business and client verticals to assess, strategize, and deliver software products and AI platforms based on market and customer needs. And his team has been leading many of our generative AI experimentations at Evalueserve this year, including various implementations and proof of concepts with emerging use cases with clients. So with that, over to you, Mangesh.
Thank you, Susan, and hello, everybody, and thanks for taking time to attend this webinar. Hopefully, it is informative for everybody. So at the very outset, I wanted to just say that the main purpose of today's webinar really is to start really drilling into real use cases of banking workflows where we actually see applicability. Because we've been talking to a lot of clients over the summer and even prior, and I think one of the questions that keeps coming up is, okay, where does this really apply? How do we leverage this in our organization? So we went back to our drawing boards. Rigvi and his team did a lot of work in this. We went to our domain specialists who understand client workflows in terms of what they're actually doing, and to figure out real integrations. Where might there be real use cases to get started with? And like any technology sort of adaptation cycle that kicks in, this is a journey. And this is sort of, again, if you look at each of our LinkedIn scrolls, we think, okay, Gen AI is kind of solving everything. Well, potentially, yes, down the road. But at this point, okay, what is it really solving and where can it really add value to our clients, whether it's in corporate banking, investment banking, commercial banking, research. So those are the areas we looked at. And sort of hopefully we'll be able to show you some real use cases where we see this being deployed. And again, just to we'll talk about some of the guardrails. This is finally financial services. End of the day, numbers cannot be wrong. You cannot pull wrong information into a client meeting. So we are very aware of that again in terms of, okay, what can be done? How do we explain it? Is it auditable? So we thought of all of those things. So maybe we'll just launch into the slides and talk about a little bit of our journey this far. So Evalueserve, as some of you know, has been on the technology journey for quite a while now, well over a decade. And then this has kind of been our journey, which for banking and financial services clients, right? We started early on with very simple task automation, data collection, and the tools we were using or the tech we were using was macro-based, Visual Basic, and it was highly customized. So wherever we saw some scale within client situations, we built automations. And that worked quite well for some time till obviously we started seeing better technology tools. And there was client conversations around, okay, we need enterprise level efficiency. We need better integration with CRM and things like that. So then we got into advanced workflows. We pioneered in our industry knowledge management in the investment banking space. We have very referenceable examples there. Again, nothing to do with AI, but just simple automation and knowledge management. And then a lot of micro automation within the investment banking workflow, what we call office automation. So that was stage 2. And today we are obviously at the AI sort of enabled data collection. How do we do zero drafts using Gen AI? And so that's what we will cover in this conversation, the last bucket, really. So with that, I will hand it to Rigvi. Rigvi?
Thanks, Mangesh, and thanks, Susan, for setting the context. And and I think this is a great journey that we've been collectively on over the last few years. And since we're talking about Gen AI, I just wanted to set the context first, right? I'm sure you've heard of Gen AI quite a bit already this year and probably dwelling into the fatigue mode. But at the same time, I think the hype cycle's done. Everyone's talking about what can we actually deliver and what is the true substance here. And if you just go back a couple of years or even 3 years, this technology itself is not new. Large language models have been in development. That concept has been there. In fact, we blogged about LLMs early last year, right? Even before Gen AI was part of the common vocabulary, kind of like the smartphones, right? Before iPhone came, there was a smartphone by Microsoft. People just didn't know about it. So akin to that, I think now it's kind of in mainstream and everyone understands at least the terminology, not necessarily the underlying tech. But I think what we've identified working with so many of our clients, both in the financial services and also the non-financial, because you get some cross-pollination of ideas, is really, Gen AI in the context of banking really falls into these two broad buckets. One is, how do you generate drafts at scale, because there's so many of these things that are templatized, and how can you do this more efficiently, right? So on the left side is more of the creation of content, personalized drafts at scale. And then on the right side is more of how do you more effectively and efficiently retrieve, find information, derive insights of that. Most people nowadays kind of equate Gen AI to chatbots, but that's not the main, I'd say, core of that technology. What actually it helps with is generation of text, right? And it's also important to note that Gen AI doesn't apply or solve every problem. Mangesh mentioned that earlier. So it's very important that we don't apply this technology to the use cases that actually are detrimental to use of the technology. So, for example, Gen AI is all NLP, NLG. It's natural language based. It can understand language, which is where it kind of shines when it comes to generation of text, and understanding. Like in this case, we have standardized prompts that work on a data corpus that is all text based. When it comes to numerical data, also, it's not like, hey, Gen AI can go compute or impute data or numbers, but it can augment the financial models, the analysis, the trading comps. So there are use cases that Gen AI can augment in case of pure numerical needs. Same thing on the right side, right? You have insights, you want to derive data. You have a lot of data, you want to derive insights. It's all language based, so you can extract that. But then when it comes to BI, which is again numbers, reporting, then you map it to an intent model, and then still use Gen AI, but to get to that intent, and then the underlying data querying still becomes deterministic. So really, you take the deterministic part of what's already there with the tech that Mangesh showed in the evolution, and then apply the probabilistic tech on top of that, and then that kind of gives you a more holistic option here. And there are several examples. Mangesh has been in discussions with a lot of our clients. So Mangesh, if you care to maybe explain one example.
Sure. Again, in the banking context, right? One of the ways we approached it was, let's take a pitch book and let's look at company profiles within a pitch book. Across a large bank, with a global bank, you have hundreds of analysts doing company profiles, and that becomes quite a staggering number. There's anywhere between 8 to 15, 20 company profiles per book, times the number of industry groups you have. And then you're dealing with a sizable effort that goes into profiles. And even if they work with providers like us, we spend a lot of time doing that as well. So if I work in healthcare and we have 400 best-in-class profiles, or even 400 is a large number, 50, why don't we feed it to a data corpus? Why don't we then apply some technology so that the next time somebody is doing a profile on Pfizer or a biotech company, the machine automatically generates a draft 0 and even gives some ideas. That would be the journey. The first, phase 1 would be that, okay, I want to do 25 profiles. If I can just give the names, I get draft 0. That's a big saving. And again, when you multiply it by the number of analysts and associates who are building these, right? So that's where I think if we can take our clients along that journey to that point in 8 to 12 months with the right corpus, the right prompt library, we'll have clear wins there, right? Same thing with case studies and bios. We could talk about tombstones that look, how does this refresh automatically with the corpus of data? So I think really we do pivot back to data being key here, because if that side of the house is not just in order, but continuously being updated as well, this engine then kind of has a dependency on the right kind of data coming in. So that's where I would put down a lot of focus on, and the prompt library and things like that. Same thing on the library side, on the write and retrieval. there can easily be, Rigby, to your point, this is not just a chat bot, but if I want to access the right kind of insights and generate, the right kind of insight-driven profiles, then I can query our internal data set, which is huge. If you take the libraries and then all the research reports and kind of tie them all in, and then depending on the use case, it can be working towards a pitchbook where you can generate some ideas. So yeah, there's quite a few things. We've discussed some of these with our clients. There's a lot of interest in, I think, targeting a couple of these, but yeah, back to you.
No, great. Yeah, thanks, Mangesh. Those are great examples. And in fact, if you really boil it down based on all the conversations we've had with our clients and the work we're doing with them, what we've learned in the last year, truly fully experimenting with Gen AI, boils down to these kind of 5 aspects, right? Obviously, we started with defining and prioritizing some of these use cases. We use quite a few frameworks internally and also help our clients do that. One classic framework that most of you may have heard is the TPQC framework. It talks about time to value, productivity, Q stands for quality, and C is new capabilities. So you can really take all of your work and then kind of classify based on that. And then that should give you a view into which ones make sense to prioritize. Because even if Gen AI can solve for something, there may be cases where it might add more work to you. So you have to kind of 1 and 2 go together, right? So while you prioritize your use cases, you should also be able to measure that and see if it actually makes sense to use this technology for that. We've done time and motion studies for our clients. If it's about productivity, efficiency, we've done capability studies to say, well, you can't even do 30 reports today because of the staff that you have. How can you get in more of the throughput, right, with the same staff? Perhaps kind of falls borderline productivity too, but the capability itself wouldn't exist for some of these clients. So if you take frameworks like that and apply it to your use cases, that would then give you things that you can actually address directly. And then that kind of also goes hand in hand with 3 and 4, which is what Mangesh was alluding to, is even if you've defined these use cases and agreed that this is where you might get the best ROI, there is a prerequisite of understanding if you have all the data you need for that to automate, right? Of course, there are cases where some of the information is in people's heads, your sales, your CRM. Not everything is entered into your CRM as an example. So then how do you collect that data corpus across these various sources? How do you make sure that it's digitized and then it's cleansed and put it in one place? So there's this, for Gen AI, there's an additional step of vectorizing that data. So then data corpus really becomes the key ingredient for the technology to work. And then the prompt library is, even if you have the best data source available, if you ask the wrong question, you get the wrong answer, right? So how do you ensure that the prompts are consistent across users and they're actually designed by domain experts? Because you don't know, if you don't ask for certain parameters, it's not going to look for those parameters. So you do need domain expertise to be able to do that. And then you take all of this, and the technology is not a standalone tech, right? It really needs to work within the context of your existing tech spectrum. So really combining your workflow tools, your CRM databases, your credit systems, all of that together, then kind of gives you the power of that use case. So, and all of this kind of comes together. I'll walk you through a quick example where we are working with our commercial lending customers on creating credit memos. And for those who are not fully aware, credit memos are almost like a dossier put together for the credit committee to look at a loan profile or a borrower profile. So a credit memo has all these sections that you see here. Some of it is like financial highlights, loan rationale. These are like true numbers. There's a number rationale for that. But then there are other areas that could be augmented by Gen AI, right? So understanding more about the borrower, the market that they play in, right? What are the factors, like if you're in commercial real estate, what's going on in UK versus in the US, and that informs the credit committee if this is a healthy loan or not, right? There's the PDL/GD analysis. You have the probability of default and everything calculated by the model, but then you need to analyze and say, is this healthy or not, right? So there's aspects to that to attach to that. So what this kind of encompasses, right, is really a user comes here, they pick the sections they want to augment with Gen AI. It connects to a data source. So for example, borrowers could come from your credit platform. It could come from external data sources for market reviews. Financial highlights could come from a spreading software. So the source becomes your data corpus. The prompt is predefined. It can be edited, but really to make it consistent, you have prompts that are designed by domain experts. And then all you need to do is click generate to create a credit memo, the zero draft of it that takes you from 0 to 40, 50% ready. You still need human in the loop. You still need to get it to 100% done, but at least your starting point is much better. And typically when you click on or when you generate such a thing, the output kind of looks like what you're used to when you look at a credit memo, which basically has all those sections, transaction summary, exit strategy, all of that kind of built into to the output. Right now, like I said, this is probably 40% done, and then you go back and then do your credit memo. So it saves you time. It's also giving you new capabilities because most likely people didn't have time to go research several databases to understand that market scenario, for example. Now it can do that automatically for you. So this is all the 5 aspects I talked about earlier kind of combined into the same, into this one example. Now there are other examples like Mangesh mentioned, Pitchbook. Mangesh, if you want to kind of explain a little more on that, or any other kind of future possibilities of the same abstraction, right?
Yeah, I think one way, again, I remember doing a lot of pitch books back in the day. It is a very structured process. And I think the lens of, what the lens or the aperture rather we can widen with Gen AI, right? So it just opens up for other kinds of analyses that we might have not done. Like I was talking to somebody, one of our clients, about an overlay analysis for a sponsors team. Where you can look at, okay, now with distressed real estate, we know the themes, but where are the top players investing in? How do we get into the real detail of it and start overlaying portfolios? So if you have a template for that, a lot of this is in the public domain. We can extract that information. Maybe that signals something. Or you go back and analyze a CEO's comments, interviews, podcasts, investor relations, everything they have said over the last 18 months, ingest it, and see what sentiments is it throwing up, right? And then overlay it with another CEO and see where, that might help with a slide in terms of an idea that, okay, we didn't think of this, but I do see a trend line here, connecting the dots, because it just ingested so much information. So there are ideas like that. Then you can pull in CRM and kind of make that a lot more robust as well with Gen AI, right? Because you can start putting in elements to CRM that, okay, if I'm tracking this client and they probably have a debt offering in the next 6 months, I need to know everything about the liquidity market, things like that in very digestible, sort of little alerts. So, the use cases can be, again, I think going back to your point, review of prioritizing use cases. Where is this, the most impactful? That's something, again, not to sing our own song here, but firms like us do that in terms of workflow understanding and seeing, okay, where time is being spent and where can that alert be most impactful, or where can a certain use case come in. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to add. Maybe one quick point, since we have a credited memo example here, there's a lot of nuance here depending on who the memo is for. Is it in a commercial bank? Is it in a corporate bank? Is it in a DCM group? Am I looking at it credit from the investment side as an investor, as a portfolio analyst? So all of them do this credit analysis, right? That nuance is the human in the loop then, right? And then again, the machine starts learning and gets better. But that's where I think there's a perfect marriage, if you will, of okay, what we as humans bring to the table, and then we get a great start with the right technology applications. So Rigvi, back to you, or is it Susan?
Oh, yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, I just wanted to end with, hey, the possibilities with this technology are vast. We just need to find the right use case and kind of go down that path. So we're obviously we're working with our clients already, including everyone in the audience here. You know, if there are burning questions anywhere, any of these areas to help, please do contact us. So that's my closing statement. Susan?
Yeah, thank you both. I think one of the key questions that a lot of people would want to ask, right, is how do we get started? I think we've dived straight into some of these use cases around kind of very involved workflows, right? But one of the other examples that we've also seen is just starting off with a simple chat function, right, or data retrieval to get your feet wet and try to understand, where that's going. So if you guys want to comment a little bit more about this use case as well. Rigby.
No, sure. Yeah, no, no, you're absolutely right. So the retrieval part, right? I think just knowing what you don't know is half the battle, right? In a lot of scenarios. So I don't want to call it a low hanging fruit, but it's also an easier relatively speaking use case to address, right? And typically information is in silos. Most corporations, most banking clients we have that problem, right? So one easy way to solve that is really get that together and then deploy a virtual expert on top of that, and then the creation of that content then flows from the same kind of abstract framework. So if you notice here, it says create a memo. That's just part of the virtual expert, right? So then you take it to the next level when you're ready for that. But at least you've solved your basic use case of retrieving that info, getting some insights directly. So that could be an easy use case to start with. Yeah.
Thanks. We've also, just prior to this, we also tried to make sure that we were addressing questions that our clients had. So we did collate a few of them in preparation for this webinar. So one of the ones that we got a lot around was, generative AI can now automate more things than we were previously used to, right? What is the role of domain experts in all of this? Maybe Mangesh, you can get started with this.
Sure. I mean, as we've seen in our research, right? I mean, the role of the domain expert actually is more important now because you are relying a little more on technology, right? So the person that understands exactly what that data artifact is, how do I look at liquidity, right? The machine does tell me something that these are the liquid ratios, these are the coverage ratios. I do need to check them, right? Because I'm going to take it up to my MD and get that question. I'm not going to blame it on GPT, right? So the role of a domain expert is more critical. I mean, our clients mostly are into more complex deals as well. I mean, there are structured, financing options available. There's a lot of nuance there. That's why that example I cited about the credit memo, what we're kind of using as a generic term, has its own flavors. And who understands that? Right? Who's to determine that, okay, this is the exact credit memo and this is the exact understanding of the liability side of this business. Did we pull in all the off-balance sheet items to analyze them, right? So that's where the human in the loop is, but with a very good start, right? And I think the journey most clients are looking for is just a springboard, right? How do we get started? But somebody's not opening a new memo at midnight to start working on it, right? It kind of comes in there that, okay, I did a generate, I have this ready. I need to verify a few facts, important facts, and then get going, right? So that domain expertise cannot be undermined or understated, rather, the importance of that.
Yeah, I agree. And just to add to that, right, even on the technology side, the domain expertise really helps create, like I mentioned about the prompt library, right? So you can't create a prompt library without domain experts, and you're not asking the right questions, and then you just don't get that info, right? So to me, that's kind of goes hand in hand. I think at least at Evalueserve, my life has been easier because we have domain expertise for the last 20 years, and we have that pool of talent for us to build these technologies pretty quickly.
Maybe one last comment from my side for the audience is also the art of the possible. I think we tend to, again, think in very sort of limited frameworks, and this allows us to expand. Some of the most interesting conversations have been in that CRM area. That how do we have a client strategy based on what we know from CRM, but let's expand CRM. To Rigvi's, I think a point was made that not everything is in the CRM. So let's go a little outside. Let's use some generative technology to see what else can we learn that gives us an edge. Because now these tools are available. So some of the use cases might be outside of Pitchbooks. They might be in this that, okay, between CRM and assessing some of the leaders in that industry or coming to a conference, we found a nugget or two that we can deploy, right? So that I think it's called the art of the possible, right? And I think that's one area we'd love to partner up with clients as well, is to be that little more imaginative that, okay, what else can we do here?
Yeah, I think from the polls, Mangesh, a lot of people are saying they're currently experimenting or haven't actually implemented generative AI, but definitely wants to. So that's definitely an area where I think a lot of the people in the audience are as well. If we have one more minute. I think another question, if you guys want to give a closing statement around generative AI, right? It's everywhere. Everyone from startups to services companies like us, right, are saying that they do it. So what is the role of, a services company or versus a tech partner versus a startup, all of these? How do you navigate that?
I can go first.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's coming from a technologist. So to all the technologists out there, no offense, but what I've found is technology only does not cut it. Services only is not efficient, right? To me, the blend of both really is the only solution in my mind. And I think the way forward, and Susan, to your point about how are there's so many startups out here. How do you know which one to pick? I think the best breed of providers would invest in technology, especially the cutting edge ones, and then really apply their domain expertise together, right, to give a holistic solution versus one part of it, right? And I think that's probably the recipe for success in my view.
Yep, I completely concur on that. I mean, so Susan, I think we're on time here.
We're up on time. So thank you very much for joining today. We'll definitely want to have more of these. So if any of you have topics that you guys want us to be discussing on webinars like these, please send them over. We'll bring in other domain experts as well from our side. Maybe also if you're interested in participating, let us know. So with that, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. All right. Thanks everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks everyone.